Hi everyone. So normally I talk with May, but she's in the airport in London. So hey ho. And as Isolde said, Anagram is myself and May, and like in the context of talking at an arts and technology festival, actually we're storytellers really, and we do use technology, and sometimes we try and be a bit artful, but really we're just storytellers. And so we like Disney, and we like good characters, and we like internal conflict and all sorts of things like that. And what happened was we made documentaries and we worked in television and in cinema, but we got a bit frustrated with the industry, and we started getting interested in what it would mean to be in a real live experience, but be part of a story. What we're really into is playing with the kind of the space and the slippage between pretending and doing. So between fantasy and real life. And in our work, we like all sorts of words get thrown around, including immersive and interactive and all that kind of stuff. But really what we want to do is we want people to participate. We want them to join in and really try and give something of themselves in the experience. We often use technology to sort of conjure tricks around people as they're in it, and we don't really use it in a way that other people here do, in a way where the work immediately makes you think about that technology by being able to see it. Rather, we like hide it behind things. But the reason that I called this talk Touching the Limits of Technology is that I want to think about how the technology shapes our work, and also how we as makers are shaped by the technology, and how we behave when we're doing the work itself. And you'll see why. So, Door into the Dark, it is unfortunately sold out, but I think some people here have seen it, and hopefully some of you also have tickets to go and see it. We've done it 3 times already. This is the 4th time we've built it. And what it is it's a live experience that you turn up to one person at a time, and you are blindfolded you're given a headset and a big pair of headphones and a blindfold, and you're let inside a very dark space, and you spend about 40 minutes inside this dark space, and so you find your way around. Nobody ever sees it, but really in the light it looks a little bit like a sort of adventure playground, and you listen to an audio documentary about what it means to be lost, and it invites you to think about your relationship with control and surrendering to the unknown. And the reason that we decided that we wanted to make something about that was partly because I read a book, I don't know if anyone else here has read it, called A Field Guide to Getting Lost. And it's by an American writer called Rebecca Solnit, and this is also where the title comes from. So, leave the door open for the unknown, the door into the dark. That's where the most important things come from, where you yourself came from, and where you will go. And I read it at a time when I was in a bit of a difficult place, let's say, and some of the other things that she says are the things that we want in life are transformative. Love, grace, wisdom, inspiration. How do you go about finding these things that are in some ways about extending the boundaries of the self into unknown territory, about becoming someone else? And to be lost is to be fully present, and to be fully present is to be capable of being in uncertainty and mystery. And one does not get lost, but loses oneself, with the implication that it is a conscious choice, a chosen surrender, a psychic state achievable through geography. So thinking about being lost, and about does being lost mean that you've given up control? Does it mean that you've surrendered to something? Does it mean that you just don't know where you are? And it started making us think about maps and our relationship with maps and how we navigate now. Because I don't know about you, but I've become very addicted to my small digital map and the glowing blue light that follows me around. But as a child, I used to follow real maps. They probably didn't look like this. But this is kind of more a way of thinking about what maps might used to have been. And May and I, we also work a lot with museums, and we work with history, really. And there was a man that wrote a book about nationalism called Imagine Communities. And what he writes is the census. So the census is the examination of all the people that live in a state. The census, the map, and the museum. Together they profoundly shaped the way in which the colonial state imagined its dominion. The nature of the human beings it ruled, the geography of its domain, and the legitimacy of its ancestry. So we started thinking about how maps are really a representation of power. They control, they name, they separate, they assess. They are a technology of a different era, if you like, and they are a political act. They shaped humans as humans were shaped by them and continue to be so. So back to Door into the Dark. So as the maker, the first question, of course, was how on earth do we get people lost? Because people don't choose to get lost. And how can we persuade people to actually give up control? Will they do it? Will they pretend to do it, or will they really do it? And we thought, okay, so the first thing is that it has to be quite fun and quite maybe a bit delightful. Like if it was a party, you'd have to go and there'd be like snacks and there'd be somebody at the door welcoming you in, and it would be pleasant and a gentle experience. So some people come and they say, oh, I'm going to be really scared, I don't want to do it. I always say, like, no, it's fine. Like, it's gentle, don't worry. And I'll play you the trailer. Can you bring the lights down, maybe?
This is a labyrinth. For now, all you need to do is follow the rope.
When you're blind, there's no sun, except there's warmth. There's no blue sky, there's no clouds. There are no walls. There are no limits to your world. You are a body standing on something in space.
Can you feel the hairs on your cheeks? Are they wide awake? Where are you?
So, you're in a state of mind where if one of us falls, we're going to die. You find yourself trying to cut off from those thoughts. But at the same time, if you allow yourself to know what the situation is, it exerts a kind of pull. What would it be like, to take a fall? I sense that urge. The urge to surrender to the void.
So what you're hearing there is the voice of the narrator and two of the characters, and there's another character as well. So being documentary makers, we like real stories. And the first two characters, one's a blind man. He's also the man who's in Notes on Blindness, if anyone's seen that VR piece and the film. Pure coincidence. And the second one is a mountaineer who gets very lost in the mountains and has a kind of brush with death. And then the third one is a man who you never hear his diagnosis, and it's not about what his mental illness is, but he talks about the experience of seeing signs in the sky and losing his mind and then finding it again. And that's the audio, but these are sort of pictures of really what it's like to make it and to do it, including all of the errors and the technology, of course. And so what this should show you is that as an audience, really your experience is most of all in your hands and in your feet. Because the way we designed it in the team, it's me and May, but then there's an architect, an engineer, and a set designer. And the beginning is on a rope, and the rope twists and turns, and you follow it around. But I don't think, well, maybe it's giving it away a little bit, but it's not really because lots of other stuff happens. But the rope ends quite early on, and you have to walk forwards into the dark. And in New York, we actually did a project where the Harmony Institute, some data analysis people, put heartbeat monitors on people as they went around. And so we tried to understand where was the point at which people's hearts were racing, most of all in the whole thing. And actually, most people, it was where they let go of the rope, which was confounded my expectations. But anyway. So you're going around in the dark, and you're feeling all these things, and some of it is ridiculous, and some of it is really pleasant, and some of it is strange and difficult. And we found that like it just completely changes people's relationship with what's going on. I mean, not of course in a way like they're blindfolded. Of course, it's going to be weird. But at the same time, I mean, it was really fun designing it because of that, because of all the strange things. But also, it does something else to your sense as you're going around. But what it's like for us, because you come and you're alone and you're in this dark space, but you are told beforehand that there is somebody in there, and at one point you might feel a hand on your arm. And don't worry, you haven't done anything wrong. In fact, it's impossible to get anything wrong. But they're just trying to help you. Don't worry. Some people jump, but don't worry. Because what's really going on, I don't really talk about this actually very often in presentations, but I thought it would be interesting today, is that you can't really see in this picture, but that's someone like hunched over a laptop, looking at the audio tracks triggering as people are going around in specific places. And the funny thing is that you as the maker, you sit there in the dark and you watch, because secretly there's a phone that's hidden inside this headset, and the phone is doing clever things, and it's triggering audio at particular times, so that exactly at the moment that someone has to let go of the rope, they hear, this is the end of the rope. Well, hopefully that's what they hear. Sometimes it doesn't happen. But really, you're watching the audio trigger, and then sometimes people do something else. Like sometimes someone just lets go of the rope halfway through and wanders off into the other corner of the gallery where the build team have left all of the leftover materials from the build. And there's like ladders, and there's some paint pots, and you're like, you realize that you've been looking the other way, and you look around, and there's this blindfolded person like walking through this like outrageous like kind of rubbish dump, basically. And so you run over to them really quietly with no shoes on, and then you have to touch them. And even though you've told the people, you know people have been told somebody might touch you, you as the person who's in there, you get really nervous, and you go like, shit, like how am I going to touch them? I'm going to touch them as if they're my best friend. So you sort of take them really gently by the arm, and then maybe you lead them back over somewhere else, and then you like put them back on the rope, and you do all this stuff really carefully, and your heart is racing, and you're like, oh my God, the tech broke, fuck. And then you're like, no, the tech didn't break. And I couldn't write the perfect piece of audio instruction to stop somebody letting go of the rope and wandering off into the building site, because all of the people that come do something different, and there's really often a moment when you have to take somebody by the arm, or lead them by the hand, or do something where you have to intervene. And what's interesting is that you as the maker worry about that you've set up this situation where you're kind of manipulating what somebody's doing using these audio instructions. And you think, oh, if I trigger this bit, they'll turn around, they'll do that. I've got these perfectly made bits of instruction that I've imagined, all the possible things that could go wrong. And like, of course, you can't imagine them all. And so you get nervous. And so you have to behave again like a human being in that context. And in the context of a festival that is about art and technology and about thinking about the future, it just struck me as interesting that I, who in my normal life wouldn't hesitate to take somebody by the hand and lead them somewhere, but in my show, in the dark, when I'm trying to look after someone, the technology becomes a barrier as well as an enabler. And it changes the way that I feel about what I'm doing. It makes me think that somehow me having to touch someone is wrong. And this is kind of, I don't know if you think this is cheesy, but hey-ho. Listening to Sherry Turkle talk about the impact of social media and mobile technologies on us, this feels like it's talking about the same thing. That the technological system that we have made to make Door into the Dark run gives me the illusion of being a companion of this person in the dark. And it makes me forget that they're a human that has a demand that I can't imagine and that I have no control over. So I think I should probably remember that. Sorry that you can't come and see it. Maybe you can, maybe you've got a ticket. But if anyone also wants to see it in the future, then you should come and talk to me and we could put it somewhere else. Thanks.